Thank you all for having us. Need more hands. There we go. Okay, so we'll start off with a little about us. So, as Drew said, I'm Wayne Morgan. I work with CASA. I'm the Safety Program Specialist. So, part of my role with CASA is to do programs like this. We usually do a whole day workshop on sector safety risk profiles, but with constraints within industry, we're trying to establish new ways of doing it. So thank you to Gliding Australia for allowing us to engage with you in this forum. My background is commercial pilot's license, avionics maintenance engineer, RPAS specialist, and now in safety programs and risk management. That's my background. Unfortunately, no gliding experience. I do have friends and associates that have it, so a little bit of knowledge, but not too much. And I'll pass you on to Andrew to introduce himself.
Thanks, Wayne. G'day all, Andrew Lockett. I'm 4 months into a career at CASA. I'm an aviation risk advisor. And my time's up. Thanks, Wayne. I've got a bit over 20 years in industry, mainly in flight operations, particularly special mission, search and rescue, maritime surveillance. And the last 6 years was actually in maintenance, so Part 145 organisations. So I'll be running the session this afternoon where we'll get into the SSRPs and specifically looking at bow ties and the risks that, or threats rather, that affect all of you as glider pilots. And I will pass back to Wayne. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Andrew. So what is the Sector Safety Risk Profile Workshop? So at CASA, we have an obligation to build risk profiles. So the information that we're going to gather from you in Andrew's session helps us inform that risk profile. We use a lot of data from ATSB, but as you can imagine, especially within your own sector as well, reporting is very low. We get to see probably 1 to 3% of incidents and accidents. So we don't have a good profile to draw from that. So we need to engage with industry to get that knowledge. So the sector safety risk profiles were introduced in 2013. We've done 29 so far, and 13 were done in the old way of doing it. We only got to publish 4 of those 13. The old way of doing it was a Greenfields workshop. So we went right back to the basics. It took 4 days to do, risk evaluated everything, big process, little outcome. So back in 2021, 22, during COVID, so it must have been 21, we came up with a new process of doing it. So 1 day workshop, and we've now done 15 of them, and I'm pretty sure we're about to publish our 15th in the next week. And they're all accessible on the CASA website, so you can see a little QR code, you can scan that if you like, but we will be sharing this slide pack with you all, so you can click on the link later. So what is a sector? It's we used to use a sector wheel to gather what a sector is. That's accessible on the CASA website as well. However, we've been carving those sectors into smaller little pieces, and you guys fall under the 149 ASAOs, but gliding also has its own little sector, so we're grabbing that as well. So we're based on focusing on the risk for your sector, recent accidents, recent incidences, and where policy change is imminent, we like to go hit that sector. So what we're not doing today is we're not greenfields. We're not going back to the basics. We're using what we have and gathering more information from you. We won't be assigning risk ratings to anything on this one. We're essentially just learning what your risks are. And there won't be any actions assigned. But in saying that, if something really important does get raised, we will be noting it, we will be passing it up the chain, and they will be visible. Chatham House rules. So anything you do say to us is de-identified. We won't be saying John Smith said this. It's all private and confidential, but we do want to hear your risks, so please share them with us. We want collaboration, of course. We want open and honest communication and facts, opinions, and evidential data if known. and best practices on management of the risks or threats. Okay, so this is out of my scope, but we usually have a SIA, safety investigation and analysis person who presents this. So this is looking at the ATSB data. So this is what CASA sees for safety and incident investigations or reports. So this presentation examines expanded glider occurrence data with a focus on safety and risk within gliding operations. Hope you can all read that. So that's the data information. So this data has been collated by our SIA team using BITRA. So that's where organisations put in movement data, pilot's hours, all that type of information, aircraft registration. I don't know if many of you are aware of BITRA. Also ATSB occurrence data that when you have an incident you report to. We use the event risk classification and with the SOAR data that you've been shared by Drew to CASA. So with the ERC, I've got this little thing here that you can scan and it actually breaks down the taxonomies used by ATSB. I know Drew showed some taxonomies earlier, but we will be using the taxonomies and it's very hard to explain what they all are. So this little QR code will help you get that up. Okay, moving on. So while the overall number of reported incidents in gliding operation is lower than general aviation, a greater proportion of these incidents are assessed as having higher safety significance. So on the left there, that's the overall occurrence comparison. So as you can hopefully see, 141,318 is all occurrences and 469 are glider occurrences. Then on the right-hand side, the little pie graph there, that's occurrence classification for gliding. So there's been 171 accidents reported, only 77 serious incidences and 221 incidents. So it's a bit low on the serious incidents. So that'd be interesting to know why. Incidents represent the largest proportion of reported occurrences across the entire period. The absolute number of incidents increases gradually over time. The relative distribution between incidents, serious incidents and accidents remains broadly consistent across most reporting periods. So if there's any questions as I go through, please raise your hand. Happy to try to delve into it a little bit more. But as you can see, there is a slight downwards trends in accidents, but everything else seems to be, except for fatal, seems to be pretty consistent. But the other two serious incidents and incidences seems to be an upwards trend, which looking at the serious incidents actually seems to be an increase in reporting trends. So BITRA regards sports aviation data reported prior to 2011, including gliding activity, as having lower data quality and as not directly comparable with data produced in subsequent years. So again, BITRA really relies on industry to report. It's a self-reporting mechanism, and sports aviation seems to be on the lower end of that self-reporting. Now, fatal injuries remain a relatively infrequent but persistent outcome within the occurrence data. When viewed year to year, fatal injury counts fluctuate at low levels, making short-term trend interpretation unreliable. And we have no notes on this slide, so I'll have to have a look. So they're little hotspots of occurrence locations for fatal accidents over the reporting period, which I believe was 15 years. They use the reporting mechanism, ATSB uses within 15 nautical miles of the closest aerodrome. And as you'll see later on, I think they use Bathurst Hospital as a reporting location as opposed to Bathurst Aerodrome, which is a bit strange. So So fatal injuries are rare but keep occurring over time with no clear downward trend. The relative distribution of occurrences across high, medium, low and no accident outcome categories remain broadly consistent across most aerodrome locations. And I do believe this is where Bathurst Hospital pops up. And we've pulled out Camden just to show that the trend with one of the airfields, because Camden does appear to be the top of the chart. Best reporting culture. Good old Camden. I actually learnt to start learning the fly in Camden. Airspace and separation issues remain a persistent feature of the data and are reinforced by the number of reported occurrences, near misses, mid-air collisions and last moment avoiding action continue to occur. So as you can see, terrain collisions, collision with terrain, it's the highest reported occurrence. Aircraft control, hard landings, aircraft separation, separation issues, aircraft separation near collisions and communication air-ground air are the top 5. Airspace and separation occurrences are the major contributor to injury. Communication discipline remains a factor. Missed, late or incomplete radio calls. Use of incorrect frequencies and limited monitoring of traffic broadcasts reduce shared awareness and increase risk. So the SAW dataset captures Australia gliding and motor gliding accidents and incidences from 2011 to 2025. The dominant safety risks are aircraft separation, loss of control at low height, hard landings, outlandings, and engine or tow-related failures, most often compounded by communication breakdown and human factors. So that's our little SIA presentation, that the safety data that we have. So as you can see, there's a little bit difference between the SAW data and what ATSB has. Most common themes are still present, but just the priority is a little bit different. Is there any questions on the data that I've presented? So we use this data to create our, as I said earlier, create our risk profile. So the risk team, they build what we call bow ties, which Andrew's going to talk about a bit later. And we want to later on hear about your threats and issues. So as Andrew's going through his bow ties, there's going to be opportunities for engagement where we want you guys to tell us your threats, your high priority threats, what keeps you up at night. So for example, we're going to be talking about mid-air collision. Then we're going to have a list of threats that result in a mid-air collision. We want to know what your highest concern is for that mid-air collision, what your top threats are. Or even more, if we don't have a threat in our profile, we want to know what it is so we can add it, so we can help address it. So collaborative engagement would be greatly appreciated. And thank you very much for your time.